when you start carving away the things that don't work, the things that fail, what's left is the things that will work. Yeah. And so if you can kind of embrace it as a leader, I think it also builds your leadership. So failure builds resilience, humility, clarity, and of course, ultimately builds your leadership.
Hey, what's up, family? Welcome to another episode of the Future is Here podcast, where we talk about the leadership principles you need to lead the next generation. Today, I'm always here with my illustrious partner in crime, Robert Aboides.
Illustrious, I like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's true. Today, Robert, yes. you titled this, right? Thank God I'm a failure.
Yes.
And the reason we're going to be talking about failure today is it's something that we all deal with. We just prayed, right? Just before this, as we're dealing with, like, what if these risks we're taking, Robert? What if these plans we're creating? What if these things that we're testing out, if they don't come through? And what does that mean? And how does that affect us? And what does that mean for us as leaders here? For me as the I carry the responsibility here. What if I fail? And I think so often leaders, right? That 3 a.m. wake up where you're you're like, sure. Oh my gosh, like I got to raise this money, or I got to let this person go, or I got to hire this person, or should I go, right or left, or, all the things that keep you up at night. And really thinking about, man, those sleepless moments at 3 a.m., what if all this thing I'm doing, I'm going to fail? But we're here to tell you there's actually some really great things in failure.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it's more common than probably we'd like to admit. I know it's not something, it's almost like if we talk about failure, it's going to happen. So if we just don't talk about it.
Can I be honest real quick? I'm a little superstitious. There are things a little bit like, oh, hey, don't say that, dude. But it's true.
No, I know.
But we're going to talk about it.
If you grew up playing sports, man, that's a real thing. Like, pitchers pitching no hitters. Like, Don't say anything. Don't say anything, because the minute you talk about it, boom, there goes a no hitter, right? Yeah. So I think it's more common for leaders to be thinking about this and be kept up at night, as you're saying. Fear of failure. But there's actually some statistics that prove out the fact that leaders fail quite often.
Yeah. Thanks so much for tuning in. Before we continue, if you like the show and want to continue to support us, the free and simple way to do that is to simply subscribe. And so we'll do our best to continue to create content to help you in your leadership.
So I was looking up some studies. There's a Center for Creative Leadership that says around 40% of new executives fail within the first 18 months. That's a lot of people. And then an MIT article said that 50% of leaders, here's the thing, that were initially successful, so they actually got it done. They did what they were hired to do, that they will eventually be fired.
Oh, yeah.
Not leave on their own, but be fired.
Well, there's a reality here. When I took over here from Dr. Larry Costa, I was so set that I believed that this is what God had for me. I actually came in going, if it fails... Right, I had to just kind of be like, well, and it was understanding failure in that way that actually gave me the freedom to do what I thought needed to be done, to make the hard decisions, to try things and fail at them, and then learn from them.
Yeah,
and we actually created here at UIWI, that's part of our cultural makeup, our corporate culture is like it's okay to fail. But we talk a lot about, like, you just don't want to fail the same way twice.
Yeah, for sure. You have to learn from your failures.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think, there are leaders who, probably the most famous example is like Steve Jobs, right? Who actually got fired from Apple. Like the board released him, but because of his convictions. His conviction was like, no, this is the right way. And it didn't work. At first it didn't work. The Macintosh, it was like not a commercial success. And so and of course, he spent like 12 years in the wilderness, nobody knew where he was. And then he came back to Apple. And of course, the rest is history, right, of him coming back. So it's not even like these 50% of these leaders we're talking about here who get fired. We're not talking about bootleg leaders who don't know what they're doing. Some of these people are some pretty high capacity leaders. Right. But I think you have to hold that loosely. Whatever you've been tasked with, whatever leadership responsibilities you have, I just don't think we can hold on too tightly to them. So I know that's probably a lot of leaders right now who are feeling that pressure of like, man, what if this thing doesn't work? Right? What if and some of you may be in that situation right now where you feel it like it's slipping away. You feel like, oh man, I don't know if this thing's going to work, but I can't talk to anybody about it because I just have to press on. Or maybe you're already in that situation where you've already failed and you're just like sitting around moping like, oh man, that didn't work. I got fired. I got let go. Or man, they told me I wasn't, and whatever reason they might have given you, that it was like, because I wasn't able to do what they asked me to do.
Well, this is actually one of the reasons why I love our context and our audience and our people, because in the urban space, the sense of resiliency is incredible. Like the things that we've already overcome or grew up with or dealing with or have carried, like there's a beautiful resiliency. And as a leader, you have to have that kind of resilience. Like you can't get in this game and do kingdom work without having a high sense of resiliency. However, we are seeing there's different levels of failure, right?
Yeah.
And there's part of it of, there's moral failures. There's all types of failures like that. And what we're talking a lot about is like, as you're living in who God created you to be and you're leading and it's something doesn't work out, right?
Yeah. Are you trying to create something or build something?
Yeah.
Or move forward?
Listen, you're not alone if you've ever tried that and it didn't work. But what we need you to do is to keep on trying. Like the failure is a gift.
Yeah.
Right? There's a gift there to be received. But if you take it or understand it in a certain way, you waste the pain. Mm-hmm. And I'm always like, don't waste the pain. Like, learn from that.
Yeah.
Don't just be like, I just failed, and I guess that's not what God wants from me, or I guess what, and we're going to actually work through it with you, like what different responses to failure and how do you engage it better. But the reality is, we want you to know a couple things. One, you're not alone. Like, this is what it takes to be innovative. This is what it takes to lead. This is what it takes to do good work in hard places. Is you need to be resilient, and failure is an absolute part of that. No one is batting 1,000 out here. No one.
No,
now,
that's for sure.
They might want you to feel like they are, and that's all social media. Like, that is all smoke. Like, if people aren't failing, you're not trying hard enough. Like, you don't have a big enough vision or dream.
Yeah.
Because if you can always manage and do it, there's something more, right? And how are you going to do something where you actually need God to help you in that?
Yeah. There's a big lie about failure, right? And I remember there's a movie about Apollo 13. I don't know if you remember, an old movie. And it was based on a book by an astronaut who wrote it, and the book was titled "Failure is Not an Option." Mm-hmm. Right, and it's a line from the movie actually. But I think sometimes we're taught at a young age that failure is not an option. Maybe we had those hard-nosed dads like, you can't fail, and then when you failed, it was miserable.
You're worthless.
Can I just out myself right now and say I was one of those dads when it came to my son's sports, and I've repented and regretted and have had those conversations with my son. But I was very much like that. I was like, no, you can't fail. You have to be resilient. You have to be the best. You have to make sure you're successful, which is weird because my sport was baseball and my son's sport was baseball. And baseball is basically, if you're failing, if you're batting 30%, you're like doing really well.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's a great analogy, actually.
Right? But I think the reality is that only people who have never really built anything of worth think failure is bad.
Yeah, I mean,
because if you've built anything that's worth anything, you have failed at least once at trying to do that.
Yeah.
Or maybe at trying to do other things, and this is where you ended up with the thing that is most successful.
Yeah.
Right. And again, I come from the tech world, and a lot of the tech innovation is a lot of that. Failed concepts that that didn't work. And then they caused that leader to be, rather than give up, they caused them to think it through again. And then they tried something else, and that other thing ended up working and blowing up.
Yeah,
so
that's good.
Anyone, I think, who's led anything or created something or taking risks knows a couple of truths about failure. One is that failure, as we're talking about, builds resilience. Right? Yeah. That's why our people are so resilient. It's not so much, we don't call it failure, but a lot of the trauma and the things that they experience, maybe failed parenthood or failed society or failed government. I mean, somebody else's failures have caused you to right, to have caused you trauma or pain or circumstances that are out of your control.
Because we've had to deal with the failure of these systems
Right.
or other people, and we've been living in that. But that has made us resilient. And so just take that principle and put it over into your own efforts.
Failure. Right.
And this actually stops us from that culture of poverty where it's a blame. It's like, man, if you give the power away to everybody of like, man, if they would adjust, or if this wasn't like this, it's like, we're not saying that there isn't systemic issues. Absolutely. But as a leader in the kingdom of God, we have to say, okay, well, let's take that resilience and let's build something that looks like the kingdom of God within these broken systems. And to do that, you're going to experience failure.
Yeah. And we're not saying take responsibility for somebody else's failure.
No.
We're saying take responsibility for how you react to that failure.
That's right. Yeah.
That's the key. The second thing is that we know that failure builds humility. I mean, if you're going hard and you have this idea and you believe in it 100% and you're like, man, I'm putting everything into this thing, and then it fails, man, that's a humbling experience.
Yeah, it's tough.
Thinking that, man, I thought this was really it. I mean, I've been there before. I've tried to build things that they just didn't work.
Yeah.
And it's a humbling experience, especially if you spend a lot of time on it, a lot of energy, a lot of funds on that thing. That's why I think a lot of leaders have trouble letting go, because they're not willing to humble themselves and go, yeah, you know what, that just didn't work.
Yeah, and that's actually really freeing, because then it releases like the responsibility that you don't need to carry. Like I remember when I started Solidarity, when I left Solidarity and came here to UIWI, I realized that I was trying to make Solidarity something that it wasn't. I was trying to actually change the church culture through this vehicle, and it was the wrong vehicle for it. Like Solidarity was like a community development corporation. Like that's really what it was. But I wanted it to like, no, we're going to take this and we're going to change the church and we're going to do all this stuff. And I was wrong. Like that was what it wasn't what it was. And that actually, like knowing that, learning that, then helped me here where I go, okay, in what ways am I trying to make UIWI something that it's not?
Yeah.
And learning and failing in that and figuring that out.
Well, you know what's really interesting about your story with Solidarity, Tommy, is that even though the core purpose behind what you were trying to do, quote unquote, failed, so many good things came out of that.
Yeah,
like there were so many other successes, but it would be easy as a leader to say, oh man, but the thing I was trying to do didn't work. And then you kind of don't celebrate or negate those successes because the core thing itself failed. But I mean, the byproduct sometimes of the thing that we're trying to do, even though that thing fails, the byproduct is really good because God is always at work in those places, right?
Absolutely.
So the future also builds clarity, because I think that, when you start carving away the things that don't work, the things that fail, what's left is the things that will work. Yeah. And so if you can kind of embrace it as a leader, I think it also builds your leadership. So failure builds resilience, humility, clarity, and of course, ultimately builds your leadership.
Yeah, and I think we just want to say that again. When you properly embrace failure, this is what builds your leadership. Like, I don't know, from the way you were raised, and your mindset, the culture you're born in, whatever the values around you and how you were shaped in that, there is this weird idea that you can't fail. So you can't admit that. And when you can't admit failure, that creates bad leaders, because then the failure is still there. So you're leading something and this thing happens or doesn't happen, and it's like this big blob of failure. If you don't own the parts of it that and just go, dude, we failed in that. I failed in that as a leader. If you don't own that, it's still there. So then it has to go somewhere. And this is where blame shifting comes, where you're like, well, it's on you, or it's on you. And I mean, we do this in our country all the time, right? Who are we blaming right now?
Oh, yeah, the guy in charge, of course.
Well, no, like who's he blaming?
Well, yeah, the people here.
Yeah, right. Like
that he thinks shouldn't be here.
Well, anytime, and we see this throughout history, there's always scapegoats. So we're like, whatever the new batch of immigrants, if it was in 1920s and 30s Germany, it was the Jews, who were less than 1% of the population, but they're the reason why all these other things, like, we're always looking for that. That's terrible leadership. So you either sit with this, look at it and learn from it, own it and do better, or the failure still sits there. Everybody can see it, And so it's got to get passed to somebody. And that, at the core, is terrible leadership.
Are you talking about blame-splaining?
Oh, yeah, man. Blame shifting, blame shifting. Yeah, it's, and you know, honestly, you can build some pretty big things by doing that.
For sure.
But that is not
a lot of people, you know, around you and support you by doing that, for sure.
And so that is so dangerous as a leader in the kingdom of God because of our value set through Scripture. And that's not going to be us, and we hope that's not going to be you guys. And so if we're saying, like, when you have failure, so when failure isn't failure, like, help me understand that.
Yeah, I mean, I think sometimes we do rush to call something a failure, because it's the opposite of not wanting to talk about failure.
Right.
Is sometimes we're like, that thing, you know, it's not working, it failed, and it's because if we don't get immediate traction for some idea, we're like, that didn't work, let's just toss it. But sometimes that's not necessarily failure, right? Because if nothing's happening, what we don't want to do is abandon that thing too early, because maybe it's not failure, maybe it's formation.
That's right. Yeah.
Right? Maybe God is not necessarily trying to, maybe God is trying to actually do something in us first and not before he does something through us. And I think sometimes we can forget that, and we can move on too quickly without having ever been formed through that particular waiting period, so to speak.
And this is why, friends, like, mission and vision are so important, because it roots you and anchors you. So what we do see a lot is you come up with a mission, you have a vision, and you try something and it doesn't work. So you change the mission and the vision for something that you feel like works. So what you're doing then is you're like the person tossed in the waves, right? In James, because you're just going, okay, I just need something that works. And you're like, no, I still believe in the vision and the mission of what we said. Like, I know what God's called me to. That didn't work. Why didn't it work? Like, what was different? You know, the context and time and place. Like, here at UIW, when we took over, I've had this. I started with a model. I came and I said, I think this is the model. That model's changed, but
a few times.
Oh yeah. I mean, when we keep on learning from it, we go, oh, but what if and it keeps on getting refined and refined and refined. But it's still, if we didn't change our mission, and our vision is much more clear. So we learned from it and built on it, and we're like getting so much more closer to, like, understanding that from beta testing and failing and learning from those things. But I'm not just chasing whatever program works, or has whatever success that I want it to have. And that's what roots us in that.
Yeah, it's a refining process, right? That if we are not getting the immediate results, we kind of look at it and try to refine it if we believe in the idea.
Yeah.
And then you just, you let it work. I think in the church, I've noticed this as a struggle. I don't think we have the patience for the long game.
Yeah.
Which is kind of weird to say, because I think a lot of pastors would say, "Oh no, I'm going to be here 20 years," right? But then I have to ask, well, wait, but why don't we have the patience for discipleship then?
Yeah.
Because discipleship is a long game. It's a long process, right? And it runs differently for every single individual. So I think we struggle with this idea of discipleship because, man, we try something and then it's not working, right? We did it for a season.
Yeah.
We did it for, a series. We did whatever. And, it just didn't change anything. So then you shift, right? That's not how discipleship works.
Yeah.
It's a long game. It's a long process.
Well, I think the other part of this too, which we don't have to get into deeply, but I don't think we have patience to think deeply about metrics and how do you know if it's working or not? Because a lot of it's just like, if it's based on, if we're talking about the church, if it's based on just how many people you can gather, not on the thing that your vision and mission actually says you're about.
Yeah.
We're creating followers of Jesus or what, but then we don't actually do the work to put in the systems and the ways of gathering the data that actually tell us if it's a failure or not. Because then how do you know? And so often when you talk about patience, it's like, well, then we move to the next thing and we haven't even stopped to go, 1, what are we actually trying to do? 2, does this thing actually work? 3, how do we know that? And 4, what do we need to adjust, right? So we act, learn, adjust. but usually we don't give that enough time.
Yeah.
And so then it's based on a lot of it. I feel it's like based on emotions or perception. And if you're going to be a visionary leader and you're going to do things that need to happen in these spaces, you have to be really clear about that and then push through when a lot of people are like, well, it just doesn't feel like we're growing.
Yeah.
But I'm like, oh, but we are.
Yeah.
Here's how I know. So,
and maybe this is probably, we could go down a rabbit hole here, but this needs to be another episode, quite honestly, because as I'm working on our dashboard methodology, right, as we're thinking about all these things, I'm realizing that there is a difference, and maybe I'm just slow to get here. Maybe everybody knows this. I just realized this, that there's a difference between metrics and statistics. Metrics is a long game because you have to have enough data for a long period of time to understand a trend or a pattern or something. Statistics is immediate. Oh, we had 20 people, we had 100 people, we had 50 people, right? This many people filled this out, this many people, whatever. Statistics is low-hanging fruit, but it doesn't tell you anything.
That's so good.
And you could read it any particular way you want.
Because even the statistics we use for vision and for fundraising and for all that, you're like, 1.2 million young people are leaving the church every year. That's a stat. The metric would be, how do we know that we're stopping that flow?
Yeah.
And that takes a lot of effort and a lot of time and a lot of, right? So it's alarmist when we're like, oh man, this is what's happening. Then do the work to figure out, my part in the kingdom of God, am I changing that or not?
Yeah. Okay, I feel like we really digressed.
Anyway,
but
failure.
Yes, that's going to be a good episode.
That'll be awesome, yeah.
Stay tuned for that one. But let's get back to failure. What if it's not just a pause? What if it's not just taking too long? What if it actually really is failure? Well, then, if you didn't meet the goal, your program flopped, whatever, you poured your heart into something and it just didn't work out. So what do you do now? Well, here's, I think, the uncomfortable, but earlier you said it's very freeing to recognize this, right? Failure is part of leadership.
It's totally a part of it.
Because at some point you're going to run into failure, and it's going to come with some disappointment. It's going to come potentially with some embarrassment.
Oh, yeah.
And it's definitely going to come with exhaustion. Like, oh, man, I worked so hard on that and it didn't work. And it might be catastrophic. It might not be rather catastrophic. It may not be that you lose your job or, you lose your title as a result of it. But it still might be an idea that really mattered to you, something that you really believed in, and yet it failed. So Tommy, what do we do with that?
So a couple things, like there's really three thoughts we might have. One, if you're going to let failure do its work in you, one, let it strip you. And
that doesn't sound comfortable.
No, and it's not. But we need humble leaders. Let it strip you in the best way, not where you're coming down. I'm the worst. I'm an idiot. You just go, man. Okay, I thought that's what it was going to do. That's okay. Like there's so much freedom, friends, and learning. If it's not a catastrophe, those are the moments where you want to you just own it. So high responsibility, high ownership. That was on me, guys. I thought we were doing it right. That's when I've gone back to donors and go, hey, we thought this is what was going to happen. Mm-hmm. It didn't. Yeah. Here's what we learned from it. So you let that strip you of and learn from it. Let it strip you of some of your understanding, some of the paradigms you had, some of the pride that you have, ego that you're like, no, I thought I know I failed in spaces where I thought I had enough woo, right? Winning others over, where I didn't have to trust build. And I thought I could just get people on my team. And it didn't work, man. We failed at it. Second, let it teach you, right? So you let it strip that pride from you and just go, okay, own the failure. Mm-hmm. Then let it teach you, man, what did I learn? What did I learn about me in that process? Yeah, what did I learn about my team? What did I learn about the larger world and context? Let it teach you. And then number 3 is let it build you. And when you let it build you, you go, okay, team, we know that we learned this from that. What about? And then you invite the rest of your team to speak into it. And that's where we start the strategy part of, okay, what do we learn from that? If you do not do that, you will waste the pain. And it's painful. You will waste the pain of it. You will fail again. And it'll, like, it's like when you're in the ocean and waves just keep on crashing on you. Like, you got to learn from it. right?
Yeah.
So,
by the way, this is, I mean, on a very personal level as well.
oh yeah.
As we're going through, the process of being formed,
Yeah.
right? We are constantly going to fall back on sin. We are going to fail in our personal flesh, right? But what's important to understand is that, especially through the redemptive work of Christ, failure is not final. It's formative.
Yeah.
God is going to use that to help you continue to grow and continue to be refined, so that we can ultimately become more like him, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think we need to apply that as well to our leadership, that those who grow through failure, it's not necessarily that they're the smartest or the most talented. It's the ones who were able to recognize that your identity, my identity, is not rooted in my performance.
Yeah.
And if we could recognize that, then you will not allow, if you don't allow failure to define your value, but let it increase kind of your worth, then that's what humility is. That's humility in action, right? That's leadership formation. And that's what we hope from this podcast that our leaders understand is like, man, let leadership do its work.
So we have there are 5 practical. So we are always about the practicalities of this. So there are 5 practical ways that you can let failure build you. Yeah. I'll start with the first one. First, you have to normalize it, and this is a cultural thing. It starts as a personal thing. You just have to normalize it. We have to stop acting like things didn't happen, or it wasn't a big deal, and you kind of like gloss over it. And real talk, like you're seeing all that come to fruition now. Where people said, well, in an inappropriate relationship, a certain behavior, and you kind of brushed over it. No, that was a failure when that pastor was 25. And now it's a much bigger failure when that pastor's in his 60s, right? So,
or NDAs, don't talk about what happened.
Yeah. Let's not talk about, normalize. Failure is a part of this. Just do it. And the reason why that hurts so much and it's so hard is because it does matter. Yeah. We're not talking about inconsequential things. These are big things, but we fail at it. You have to learn from it. And then you have to learn, as you normalize it, one of the ways to do that is you actually have to speak that out. You can't isolate that in yourself, or you can't hope that and maybe that was your family growing up. You never talked about things. Yeah. But you have to bring it up to your team and you own it. I will tell you right now, friends, when you do that, your team will start to go, what it does on a real talk, it protects them because they know that the leader's going to take the hit. That was my fault, guys. I was the one that said we should do that. I was the one that said we should go that way, and we failed at it. That's okay. And that gives a lot of other people, that'll increase your creativity. That'll increase people staying on your team. There are some real practical things from this that are beautiful. So say it out loud. That was a failure. And it's not weakness to admit it. In fact, your leaders will really respect you for it if you fully own it. Because I have heard I've watched people do this. Yeah, guys, that's on me. I mean, it would have worked, but I mean, you didn't really shoot through, or well, so-and-so didn't come through. No, just fully own it. And then, it's this weird thing. When you pretend that failure didn't happen, it's robbing you of the power to grow from it.
Yeah.
Because you're not confronting it. You're not just going, what is it? Let's get into it. And that takes your whole ego and identity out of it. If your identity and ego's in the performance, like you said, then I don't want to normalize it because it's too painful. And I'm telling you, the way of Jesus, God's not sitting there going like, oh, idiot, like you've failed. He's sitting there going, okay, what did you learn from that? How I'm still here. He wants to co-create with you in that. And it's a beautiful thing. So the first one, practically normalize it.
Yeah, I mean, the second one is reflect, don't just react. We have seen so many leaders who, upon failure, just go, okay, well, yeah, let's do this now instead, and then that doesn't work, and then, well, let's try something else. I call it leadership whiplash, where they're constantly like just pulling their team from one thing to the other. But we really need to make sure that we take time to reflect after a failure, right? Ask yourself the questions: what worked? What didn't? Did I overestimate somebody's involvement, or did I overestimate or underestimate how much this thing mattered to everybody? Did I move too fast or too slow, right? Sometimes we're moving so fast that we're not paying attention because we believe so much in the idea that we're not seeing all of the trail of dead bodies we're leaving behind and the exhaustion we're creating in our team. And also blind spots. Sometimes, you fail because like, wow, I didn't even see that truck coming. Like I was paying attention to this over here.
Yeah.
I had no idea, right? I never looked in my mirrors. And so because of that, I end up crashing and burned. So, and then, what will you do differently next time? So these are things that you can reflect on with regard to the particular idea.
Yeah.
Right. Is like, okay, why didn't it work? You can do that. But you also need to reflect very heavily was it even a good idea?
Yeah.
Maybe all of these things are answering the question for you that, you know what, that just wasn't a good idea. None of it worked.
Yeah. And there's so many things, Robert, in our podcast that connect to the other values that we've shared on this podcast so often. Yeah. And it all makes, it starts to make sense, right? But number 3, right, is write the lessons and make them plain. Now, in this, one of the ways that this connects with what you were just talking about is if you create a corporate culture or an institutional culture that's value-based, for here at UIW, we say best idea wins. Mm-hmm. So when you invite your team, if you're the leader and you're the only one that has the ideas and you're the only one to do it, of course you don't want to and then you want to blame shift because you're well, but it's on you. Here's what we do is best idea wins. People have wonderful ideas and we don't know, but we're going to try it. And if it does fail, then I own it. And that protects your people and that helps them then be courageous and come up with risks and innovation. And it actually creates a better space, right? Yeah. And so when we write the lessons and make them plain, we don't just move on. We write down, you can easily write down 3 things that you learned from the failure. Another reason, part of this is you can do a SWOT analysis. These are, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. These are great, but I've seen a lot of organizations do those without the freedom of their team being able to speak truthfully. Yeah. So you've got to create the culture. And when you as a leader own it, it creates a safe space for your team to go, hey, I think that was a terrible event. Or I think that was it was really bad. If they're nervous because it's all wrapped up, if they say something bad about what you guys did together, but that really means I'm saying something bad about the leader, you can't say anything because you're like, well, maybe God just didn't have it for us. Or you can come spiritualize it. But if I'm okay going, look, we came up with this together. I own it, so don't worry about that. Then we can all objectively look at it and go, I think this was good. These things were bad. I don't think we should do it again. Yeah. Or we should think about it differently.
Yeah, I think with 2 and 3, the reflecting and not reacting and writing the lessons and making plain, I think we should be careful. Again, I think we've said this, but assuming that it was the right idea but the wrong execution. Yeah. That happens a lot, I think, in the church.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, oh, well, you know what? We just didn't have enough funds, or we just didn't communicate it enough. And so you're so right off the bat. Again. Yeah, you do it again. Yeah. You assume that the idea was great. It just was the execution that was wrong. And so we rationalize failure rather than just admit that, hey, maybe that just wasn't a good idea. Yeah. Like, can we not ever do that again? I mean, I've been part of those conversations where like, dude, that was horrible. Can we just not do that ever?
And the response usually is, but we've always done it. Yes. But we've done it for this many years. And that just kills innovation and kills moving forward.
I think there's a subtle difference here. This is really important. I think it's important. There's a subtle difference between asking the question after an event or a program or something, between asking the question, how can we make it work? And why didn't it work?
Oh, that's big.
Right? Because how can we make it work assumes the idea is still great.
That is good. Yeah.
And we're just going to,
keep on massaging this thing
it until it works. Whereas why didn't it work? Well, actually, it maybe help identify the fact that it's because it was a bad idea.
It was trash. Yeah. So write lessons, make them plain. Number 4.
Invite feedback.
Yeah.
I mean, this is what you're talking about. This is what we do, right? As part of our culture here is you got to bring in trusted voices. In our case, our staff we trust our staff.
Yeah.
We trust them to bring the heat, bring the truth, right? The reality. Sometimes we fail. Honestly, we may not even know why it failed. And we're just like, I don't know. What do you guys think, right? Yeah. Invite other people to speak into that. And then, ask somebody, what do you see that I might be missing?
Yeah.
Right, even peers or other organizational leaders, like, hey man, have you ever tried this? We tried this and it didn't work. Do you have some experience in that? Yeah. Right, or maybe reach out to people who have been successful in that thing, and ask them, hey, how did you guys make it work? Here's the thing about that though, because I have been privy to some of those conversations. The thing that made it work is a completely different culture and context, and so you'd be like, oh. Okay, well, that's why it didn't work.
And that's how you can allow that failure to then shape the larger story or larger institution.
Yeah,
so good,
for sure. And the last one is, you alluded to this earlier, Tommy, we got to let it build you.
Oh, yeah.
Right? That just because something failed doesn't mean you're a failure.
It's all part of it. Just normalize that. Yeah.
So this is where I think resilience forms, right? Letting our failures shape a stronger version of us. Maybe a more thoughtful, more spirit-led version of us. And the key is to move forward with clarity, wisdom, and then even more grit than before.
Yeah. And I think, with this, as we just wrap up today, friends, I just want to connect it for you that here's a beautiful strategy of God. If you try your joining in the kingdom of God, you try something big, it fails. One of the things we talked about early was that actually strips you. When it strips you of your pride and your ego of this, and it's not about you as the leader, that allows all these other things to happen so that even when you invite feedback, people aren't speaking against you. It's not that you suck or you're terrible or you're a failure. It's that this didn't work. Okay, so if I allow the failure to strip me of that, of my ego and pride in that, then I can actually be much more objective and go, look, I don't care. I want to reach my vision and mission. I want it to work. And that all the way comes down, then it builds you, and then it builds those around you. And so there's like a full circle here of like when you own it, it lets you strip you of that pride and that ego, and then you're able to do all these things, and you're creating in that circle a better church, a better business, a better family unit, a better nonprofit. You are creating the type of value-based culture that we keep on talking about. And don't you want to be in that? We just did strategic planning.
Yeah.
And we had some young, right, Gen Z in the room, right? They were Gen Z, right?
Yeah, they're Gen Z.
So Gen Z in the room. We have a staff member and then an intern. And we just asked them, what are we missing? How are you guys listening? Or how we elicited their thing. Now, their feedback was, I could have never said this in the other places that I've been in. And we're like, they're like, I haven't experienced what I just experienced here. Because you had the leaders and other leaders just going like, oh, you're right. I think I got that wrong. And it creates a totally different environment because we're looking at the problem together. It's not that I'm the problem or not. It has nothing, like I'm just part of the solution of what God's up to. And so if you can have that creates better institutions, better movements, better organizations. And that's what we really hope that you would take from this idea of thank you, Lord, for helping me fail, walking with me through the failure.
And I think we want to just emphasize for you leaders out there that your leadership is not defined by what went wrong, but it is defined by what you do with what went wrong.
That's reaction.
And that's a key, right? Is that rather than just be reactionary to it, follow these 5 strategic principles that we just talked about, because God doesn't want to waste your mistakes. He's not wasting them. He's using them to shape the kind of leader, and that's going to have to carry the future weight of your calling. I think too many times we're worried about what's happening now, but there is a future that God has envisioned for you, and failure is part of that future. And so we need to embrace it. We need to stand up, look around, ask, hey, what is failure teaching me? And then just keep walking in that resilience.
Yeah. So we hope you've enjoyed this whole episode about failure. You're a failure. I'm a failure.
Thank God I'm a failure.
Yeah, absolutely. This is all part of it. So we hope this has been helpful for you, and we can't wait to see you on the next time on the Futures Here podcast. Peace.